Long Island medium star Theresa Caputo recently faced a deeply tragic incident. Her son, Larry Caputo Jr., was seriously injured at the hands of his wife, causing family turmoil. Theresa Caputo commented on this, saying, "A woman who can hurt my son can hurt me. She can no longer be part of our family." It all began on a quiet autumn evening when Theresa received a phone call that would change everything. Her son, Larry Caputo Jr., a kind-hearted and devoted man, had been seriously injured. His wife, Maria, someone Theresa had always welcomed with open arms into the family, had attacked him in a fit of rage. The details were murky at first, but the result was clear. Larry was in the hospital, fighting for his life. Theresa's heart shattered. Larry was her only son, and to see him in pain was a grief she had never prepared for. But the true heartbreak came when she learned who was responsible. Maria, the woman she had trusted as a daughter, had turned violent. The shock of it all left Theresa reeling, unable to comprehend the betrayal. "I never thought this could happen," Theresa whispered to herself, the weight of her sorrow heavy in her chest. But there was no escaping the reality. Days passed, and Theresa wrestled with conflicting emotions. Her heart bled for her son, whose life had been irreversibly changed by the woman he had once loved. She couldn't understand why Maria would harm the man who had always been good to her. She asked the spirits for guidance, but no answer seemed to bring peace. However, it was a chilly autumn evening in Long Island. Theresa Caputo sat in her cozy reading room, candles flickering around her, their soft glow casting shadows on the walls. The cameras were rolling for Raising Spirits, and tonight's guest, Emily, sat anxiously in the chair across from her. Emily, a woman in her late 30s, had lost her younger brother, Jake, in a tragic accident 5 years ago. She had spent those years drowning in guilt, regretting their last conversation, an argument over something trivial. Theresa closed her eyes, taking a deep breath. Suddenly, she gasped. "Oh boy, he's here," she said, her voice filled with certainty. Emily's eyes widened. "Jake." Theresa nodded. "He's showing me a letter, something unfinished." Emily clutched her chest. "Oh my God, he was writing me a letter before he passed. I never found it." Theresa's eyes darted around the room, as if following an unseen presence. "He says, look inside the old brown box, the one in your attic." Emily's hands trembled. She knew exactly what box Theresa was talking about. Jake's old things, packed away after his funeral. She had never opened it. Tears welled in her eyes. "He really forgives me." Theresa smiled. "Not just forgives, he never blamed you. He wants you to stop carrying this guilt. He's at peace." Emily broke down, years of pain releasing in an instant. That night, she rushed home and tore through the attic. Buried beneath old books and clothes, she found a small, crumpled envelope. Inside was an unfinished letter from Jake. I know we fight sometimes, but I love you, no matter what, always." Tears streamed down her face. Jake had never left her. His love had always been there, waiting to be found. However, Theresa Caputo had spent 15 years as the Long Island medium, delivering messages from the spirit world to countless people. She had seen tears of joy, relief, and closure, but never had she been left completely speechless. One evening, Theresa was preparing for a private reading in her cozy Long Island home. The client, a middle-aged man named Daniel, sat across from her, clutching a small locket in his trembling hands. His eyes were filled with hope and desperation. Theresa closed her eyes and took a deep breath, letting the spirits come to her. The room grew cold. A familiar tingle ran down her spine. "I have a woman coming through," she said. "She's telling me she loves you very much. She's showing me a locket." Daniel gasped. "That's my wife's. She passed away last year." Theresa continued. "She's saying something about the number 15. Does that mean anything to you?" Daniel nodded, tears welling up. 15 years ago, we met for the first time on this exact date." Theresa felt another surge of energy, but this time, it was different, intense, overwhelming. The lights flickered. Her heart pounded. Then, for the first time in 15 years, she heard something she had never experienced before. A voice, clear, direct, and loud, as if the spirit was standing right beside her. "Daniel, my love, I am here." Theresa's breath caught in her throat. Spirits always spoke through emotions, visions, and subtle messages. Never before had she heard one speak so clearly, like a living person. Daniel's face turned pale. "Did you hear that?" Theresa nodded slowly. "Yes." The room fell silent, except for the faint sound of the locket's chain jingling in Daniel's hands. For the first time in 15 years, the Long Island medium was truly stunned. However, Theresa Caputo, the famous Long Island medium, was always on the go. From one reading to another, she balanced her psychic abilities with her personal life and self-care. On a bright Tuesday morning, she decided to try something new, a spin class at a local gym. The idea of a high-energy workout, complete with the music, the sweat, and the speed, felt like the perfect way to release some stress. She entered the gym, adjusting her oversized sunglasses and the iconic hair that everyone instantly recognized. The spin instructor, Lisa, greeted her with a warm smile and led her to a bike at the front. Theresa smiled back, but deep down, she knew today would be more than just a workout. The class began, and the music blasted through the speakers. The instructor encouraged everyone to push themselves, to pedal faster, harder. Theresa, however, was having a hard time concentrating. She wasn't just focusing on her pace or the rhythm of the music. No, something was pulling at her, calling her attention away from the spinning wheels and the heartbeat of the class. Then it happened. In the middle of a particularly intense sprint, Theresa felt a sudden chill rush over her. A wave of energy swept through her body. She looked around, her senses sharpening. There, standing at the edge of the room, was a man. He was young, maybe in his early 20s, with a worn-out look on his face, as though he had something to say, but he wasn't quite sure how. "Lisa," Theresa called out, unable to keep the words to herself. "I'm sorry, but I need to speak with you for a moment." The instructor, a little confused, slowed the class down and approached Theresa. "I'm sorry, I know this sounds strange, but I have a message," Theresa began. "There's a young man here, and he wants to speak to you. I don't know how to explain this, but I feel he's been waiting for the right moment." Lisa's face turned pale. "What do you mean, a young man?" she asked, trying to make sense of the situation. Theresa took a deep breath. "He's telling me he passed away in a car accident, and he wants you to know he's okay now. He's telling me something about a necklace, a charm you wear around your neck." Lisa's eyes widened. Her hand instinctively went to the silver necklace she always wore, a gift from her late brother. "My brother," she whispered, tears starting to form. I lost him a few years ago in a car crash. I didn't know how to move on." Theresa smiled softly. "He's here, and he's at peace now. He says you've been working through a lot, but he's proud of you. You're helping so many people, and you're exactly where you need to be." The entire room seemed to pause. The spinning bike slowed, and everyone turned their attention to Theresa and Lisa. The energy in the room had shifted, and there was no denying it. The connection was real. Lisa took a deep breath, wiping away the tears, but her face radiated relief. "Thank you," she said, her voice breaking. "I've been carrying that pain with me for so long. I didn't know if I'd ever be able to heal." Theresa nodded, giving her a reassuring smile. "Your brother is with you, always. And sometimes, Spirit chooses the strangest places to make their presence known, even in a spin class." The class continued, but for Lisa, the session wasn't just about burning calories. It was about healing, closure, and a deep connection to the love that never fades. Theresa, as always, had channeled something much bigger than a simple workout. She had brought a message from the other side. However, It was a crisp, breezy evening in Long Island, and Theresa Caputo was dining at a cozy little Italian restaurant with her mom and a few of her mom's closest friends. The restaurant was tucked away on a quiet street, the air filled with the laughter of families and the clink of glasses. The warm glow of the candles on each table made the atmosphere feel intimate and welcoming. As the conversation flowed between her mom and the others, Theresa felt an odd sensation, one that she knew all too well. It was a message, a sign from the other side. Her heart skipped a beat. She glanced over at her mom and her friends, sensing their love and affection for each other. But there was something more, a connection to the other side that Theresa couldn't ignore. Her mom's friend, Carol, was talking about her childhood memories when suddenly, Theresa felt the presence of a spirit. Her face softened, and a slight smile crept across her face as she took a deep breath. She couldn't shake the feeling that someone was trying to communicate. She turned to her mom and whispered, "I think I need to do a reading." Her mom, who knew Theresa's abilities well, nodded with encouragement. "Go for it, honey. I think they're ready." Theresa stood up and, with a gentle yet commanding presence, turned to the group. "I have something special to share. I know this might seem a little strange, but I'm feeling the energy of someone who wants to reach out tonight. If you're open to it, I'd like to do a reading." Her mom's friends exchanged puzzled but intrigued looks. Carol raised her hand, smiling nervously. "Theresa, are you serious? Here in the middle of dinner?" Theresa smiled back. "You'd be surprised how often spirits love to make an appearance when least expected." With a flick of her hand, Theresa closed her eyes, allowing herself to feel the energy that surrounded her. Slowly, she spoke. "I'm sensing a strong presence, someone with a deep connection to you, Carol. A mother figure, someone who always looked after you. A woman who was full of life and who has passed on recently. She's here." Carol's face went pale, her eyes widened. "Oh my God, my mom, I thought I was just imagining it. But it feels like she's always with me." Theresa nodded, her hands resting gently on the table. "She's here now, and she wants to say that she's proud of you. There's a feeling of love that surrounds you, Carol. She's telling me that you've been holding on to something, a regret, a feeling of I should have done more. But she wants you to know that you did exactly what you needed to do. You were there for her when it mattered most." Tears welled up in Carol's eyes. "I always wondered if I could have done more, if she knew how much I loved her." Theresa smiled softly. She knew. She's been sending you signs ever since she passed. She's around you every day, watching over you, making sure you're okay. The entire table sat in stunned silence, their gazes fixed on Theresa. The energy in the room had shifted, a sense of peace settling over them. For the rest of the evening, Theresa continued to share messages from the other side. One by one, her mom's friends received personal and comforting words from loved ones they had lost, leaving each of them with a sense of healing and connection. As they finished their meal, Theresa's mom looked at her, pride shining in her eyes. "You've made this a night to remember, Theresa." I think the joy of surprising her mom's friends with a little unexpected magic. The restaurant felt even warmer now, not just from the candles, but from the love and comfort that filled the air, a true testament to the power of connection, both from this world and the next. However, it was a crisp, cool afternoon on Long Island, and Theresa Caputo, the famous Long Island medium, was preparing for another session with a new client. She had been sensing a lot of emotions in the air that day, and when she greeted her client, she immediately felt a strong, loving presence from the other side. The client, a flamboyant and colorful drag queen named Alex, had arrived wearing an extravagant purple sequin dress, matching heels, and bold makeup that made a statement. But despite his vibrant exterior, Alex's eyes betrayed the sadness he had been carrying for years. His mother's sudden passing had left a void he hadn't been able to fill. As they sat down across from each other, Theresa took a deep breath and began her session, gently opening the door to the spiritual world. "I feel a mother's energy here," Theresa said, her voice soft but certain. "She's stepping forward, and I can sense that she's been watching over you." Tears welled up in Alex's eyes, his breath catching in his throat. "My mom," he whispered. "I miss her so much." Theresa nodded, her expression one of understanding. "She's showing me how much love she has for you. She sees the person you've become, the strength and confidence you have now, and she's so proud." Alex's chest tightened as he listened. He had always wanted his mother to accept his journey into the world of drag, but he had never fully known if she truly understood. His heart ached with the thought of how much he wished he could tell her everything, to see her eyes light up when he took the stage. Theresa paused for a moment, her eyes closed as if listening to something in the distance. Then she said, "Your mom is telling me that she always saw you as her shining star. She's proud of the person you've become, and she's here with you now. I'm getting something very specific. She's showing me you in full costume, performing, and she's smiling. She wants you to know that, even though she wasn't physically present at the time, she was watching and cheering for you." Alex's hands trembled as the tears flowed freely down his face. "She never saw me perform as myself, as Alex, the drag queen. I always hoped that she would, but she never had the chance." Theresa looked at him gently, her voice steady. "She wants you to know that she was always there in spirit, supporting you in ways that you may not have felt. She was proud of the person you've become, regardless of the makeup, the costumes, or the name. She loves you unconditionally, just as you are. And she's been waiting for this moment to come through to say she's sorry if she didn't fully express it before." Alex's heart swelled, a sense of peace beginning to wash over him. "Thank you, Theresa. I didn't realize how much I needed to hear that until now." Theresa smiled warmly, her energy filled with kindness and reassurance. "Your mom is with you, Alex. She's never truly gone. She'll always be your biggest fan, and she's still here, watching over you every step of the way." As the session ended, Alex stood up, feeling lighter, the weight he had carried for so long finally lifting. He stepped out into the world with a renewed sense of love and purpose, knowing that his mother's spirit was always with him, celebrating every performance, every victory, and every step of his journey. And as the sun set on Long Island, Alex felt his mother's love shining down on him, just like it always had, guiding him forward with pride and compassion. However, Theresa Caputo, the famous Long Island medium, sat in her cozy living room, sipping her tea as she prepared for another day of helping people connect with their lost loved ones. She had helped many through the years, but each session, each reading, always carried a deep emotional weight. Little did she know, today would be different. A man named Frank had called her office earlier that week, his voice shaking with desperation. He had been diagnosed with terminal cancer, and he didn't know how much longer he had left. He had been holding on to something, an unresolved regret, and he was hoping Theresa could help him find peace before it was too late. On the day of the reading, Frank arrived with his daughter, Sarah, by his side. He was frail, his face pale and his eyes tired, but there was a strength in his gaze. As Theresa greeted them, she could immediately feel the heaviness in the room. This was a man carrying years of sorrow. They sat together at the table. As Theresa closed her eyes, she asked the spirits to guide her, as she always did. Moments later, she felt the presence of Frank's late wife, Mary. The energy was so strong that it took Theresa's breath away. Mary had something to say. She turned to Frank and said, "Your heart is burdened by guilt, but I want you to know that I've already forgiven you. It's time to forgive yourself." Frank's face contorted with emotion, and tears welled up in his eyes. He had never forgiven himself for the way their last years together had ended. He had been distant, angry even, and his regrets had haunted him for so long. But Mary's words brought a sense of release. As Frank wept quietly, Theresa turned to Sarah, who was holding her father's hand. Sarah, too, had been affected by the unresolved pain, and now she, too, had a message. A younger spirit, a little boy, appeared. Theresa was struck with a sudden realization. "Sarah, I'm seeing a young child," Theresa said softly. "Is there something you've been keeping inside? Something involving a child you lost?" Sarah gasped and nodded, covering her face. She had lost her son in a tragic accident years ago. The grief had torn her apart, and she had never fully healed. Theresa reached out, her hand gently placed on Sarah's. "Your son is with you, Sarah. He's saying that he's okay. He's not angry. He loves you and he's sending you strength. He's watching over you." Theresa reached out, her hand gently placed on Sarah's. "Your son is with you, Sarah. He's saying that he's okay. He's not angry. He loves you and he's sending you strength. He's watching over you." It was too much for Sarah to bear, and she broke down in tears, her sobs filling the room. But these weren't just tears of sorrow, they were tears of relief. Finally, after years of pain, she could feel her son's presence, hear his voice, and know he was at peace. The room was quiet for a moment, and the weight of the emotional connection between the spirits and the living hung in the air. Frank looked at Theresa, his eyes wide with a mix of awe and disbelief. "Thank you," he whispered hoarsely. "Thank you for bringing her back to me. I can finally say goodbye." As Frank embraced his daughter, Theresa couldn't help but feel the powerful bond that had been restored. It wasn't just a reading, it was a healing. She wiped away her own tears and smiled. In this moment, they had all found peace. As they left, Frank's steps seemed lighter, Sarah's heart seemed less heavy, and Theresa knew that once again she had helped guide lost souls back to the light. It was a bittersweet goodbye, but for Frank and his family, it was the beginning of their healing journey. And for Theresa, it was yet another reminder of why she did what she did, to help others heal, to bring love, comfort, and closure. Even in the hardest moments, the connections were worth it. Hello lovely viewers, welcome to my channel. I am Mina. Hope your day is so well. If you like the video, don't forget to subscribe the channel.